Hello, everyone. This is the April 27th, 2021 meeting of the Charter Review Commission Process Committee. Yes, Patty.
Somebody has something on, and it's causing a little bit of
I hear it.
difficulty.
I hear
Yeah.
it. It's
And
making
I don't know whose it is.
it's making things chop up.
Can
So
we all mute until we speak?
Right.
that would be a good idea. Just watch it yourself. I'm not going to mute or unmute anybody. Watch it yourself and put yourself on mute and take yourself off as appropriate, please. Okay. Well, that's good. We have Patty Garcia and myself, Bob O'Connell. We've got Liz Lafferty here, Jane Fuller, Bill Apple. We are missing Kyle, and we are blessed with the presence of our big chair, Kevin. Kevin is here. And then we have several members of the public. You all know the drill, having attended before for the most part, I believe. We will leave 10 minutes at the end of the, and it may turn into 15, but we'll leave 10 minutes at the end of the entire day. It's 10:30 to 12. So the last 10 minutes of the meeting will be for the public to address us. And if you will remain muted and with your video off from now until that time, okay? We would very much appreciate that. So we will be talking to you at 11:50 then. Thank you. All right, folks, we have a big agenda. It's not long, it's just big.
I move the minutes be approved.
Okay, but Liz had her hand up, so is that what you were going to do, Liz? Okay,
Yes.
great. Any discussion about the minutes? Any corrections needful to the minutes? If not, with a word of thanks to Patty, let's take a vote. All in favor of approval of minutes, say aye. Aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Boom, 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 boom. We're good. Okay. Now, the next thing on the minutes is a reconsideration of the CRC budget and provisions amendment. Let me say a word about that. Our chairman, Kevin, sent before the meeting when we approved the CRC budget and provisions amendment. Before that meeting, he sent me an email kind of late in the afternoon, early in the evening or whatever, before the day before the meeting. I missed it and proceeded without that information. And he brought it to my attention, and I looked at what he had, and there were some valuable things in there, one way or another, to either accept or reject. And so I am putting this back on the docket. When I announced that, I got a small flood of of people who wanted to. Well, we have, for instance, let's see. We have. And by the way, I sent some of this out when there were only 4 documents to look at. We have the original. Originally proposed to the process committee. We have passed by the process committee on 4/13/2021. We have Kevin's proposed amendment of what we had passed, and we have Bill's amendment of Kevin's amendment, and then we have a Kevin 2.0 amendment, and then we have a Bill 2.0 amendment. Okay, so we have like 6, I guess, things to go through, and it may not be necessary to go through all of them. It may be that a couple of the people who suggested more than one would only want us to look at their last one. I don't know. So did everyone get my email where I attempted to give you all of those documents?
Yes.
Yeah, some of them you didn't get in the email because they've just been received in the last 24 hours. Okay, so
Well,
those.
the latest one that Kevin sent out is one that has really been drawn through the keyhole because Randy has gone over it to avoid a situation where we are would be making an incursion into some statutory aspects of the prosecutor, which is the statutory office.
Mhm.
The manager is not. He's a contractual office.
Right.
Also, the difficulty that Maureen had is due not to Randy, but to the manager. And so the way I see it, this is directed toward resolving bureaucratic, well, like hitting a pillow in getting a CRC started, the next one started. It is really directed to the problem and not to where it isn't a problem. And moving in on the prosecutor area creates a problem.
Right.
And so
I see that.
this is why you're seeing a shorter version, which has been cleaned up and aimed better, I think.
I thought personally, I thought the county council was a good place to deposit those responsibilities. But at any rate, let's go through these. You will recall that I wrote up this. Kevin asked that we take this on. I wrote something up and presented it to y'all, and you looked over it and said, "Well, that's okay," except, sorry, gotta mute this. And you all said, "That's okay, but we need to take out the line, in no event shall the funds provided to the CRC be less than the total expenditures of the immediately preceding CRC, plus an allowance for inflation experienced during the," gosh, I don't know what to do about this. Thought I turned it all the way down. So we took that out, and it passed with once it was gone. Okay, and I sent you a copy of what passed also, and then it's much shorter. Hey, can you all hear me?
Yep.
Okay, this is, people are calling me on the phone. I'm trying to turn my phone off. I've got, boom. I have to get back in, folks. I'm sorry. The screen disappeared for me. Okay. There I am. Okay. So we got that far, and then Kevin came along, and well, he came along the day before, but by the time I got around to recognizing that he wanted to add some stuff, he did, and you all should have that too in the package that I sent you, and it's got an added section that talks about the county manager assigning at the minimum one half FTE and various other things. And so I think a good way to start, since we already had something that we had approved, would be to ask Kevin to go over the changes that he is proposing, including both the first document that you all have and a second one where there are additional changes. Okay. Kevin, is that okay with you? Liz?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would be happy to speak to him.
And we will go over all of them. Okay. And
Well,
so, yes, Liz. I'm sorry, Kevin. Liz has got her hand up. Go ahead, Liz.
In the interest of time, I just wonder if the commissioners are all in agreement with what's been submitted, what we had already approved with Kevin's all we need to look at is Kevin's addition, and then we can look to see if we can get to a motion.
No, that's not true. Bill has some suggested changes too, and both Kevin and Bill suggested changes on Kevin and Bill's changes. Okay. So I mean, unless you're saying, hey, let's not look at those, let's just toss them out, which we could do. But
I'm just saying that we cut.
Chairman,
Go, Kevin. You're breaking up, Kevin.
could you try again, Kevin?
I put it back on mute.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
can you guys hear me okay now?
Yeah, sort of.
So all I
Yeah, it
was
was
gonna
better.
say- Okay, sorry, there's only a link, and if I had a phone number, I could be better, but I will try here. What I was gonna say is you can disregard all of mine except for the latest one I sent last night.
All right.
That one has been very thoroughly vetted. I have to say, a little contrast with Bill, that there were no statutory ramifications of any of the drafts. But one of the points Bill made is important, which is we didn't have a problem with the prosecutor. And I wouldn't even say we had a problem with the manager. I think the problem was that the charter did not have specific language talking about a transition. And so what we're trying to do is clarify that language and be more prescriptive so that future charter review commissions don't go through what we went through. And I think this latest version gets at Mark Twain's quote of, I wish I had time to write a short letter.
Okay, here's what I propose.
The shorter version is short and sweet.
Here's what I propose. Let's take a look at what has been passed and look at the second one that you're suggesting, Kevin. And then after we've looked at that, we'll ask Bill about different things that he had proposed and whether or not this meets his requirements also. Patty, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I was wondering if it wouldn't be possible for us to also have a motion out there to approve Kevin's, and then we can discuss that.
Anyone can make any motion they'd like to.
Okay, I would like to move that we approve Kevin's most recent submission.
Second.
Oh, and Bill seconds it. This has a good sound to it. Liz, you've got your hand up. Do you want to do something? It's time to discuss the motion now. Go ahead, Liz. You're muted, Liz.
I was voting in favor.
Oh,
Of the motion. It's not time to vote yet. I want to make sure there's no discussion. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, it is now time to vote.
Mr. Chairman,
Kevin, you're breaking up really
Mr. Chairman,
badly.
can you hear me?
Yeah. With an effort,
Can
I
you
can
hear me
hear
now?
No, Kevin, it's not working. Not working, Kevin.
You're coming in from outer space, Kevin.
I'm hearing an occasional vowel and then a little bit later a consonant, but no words. It sounded like Kevin wanted to comment on this motion, even though it's about to, I don't know if it's about to pass, but since there's no other. Yeah, Jane.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Kevin. I'm
Can you
sorry,
guys
you
hear
were
me now?
first, Kevin, and then we'll get to you, Jane, okay? Remind me, yell at me if I don't get to you. Go ahead, Kevin.
All I was going to say is procedurally, somebody who voted on the prevailing side of the previous motion for the previous language needs to ask for reconsideration. You guys need to withdraw that motion and then adopt the new motion.
All right, yes, I do get that, and I believe we all voted for it. Is that correct? Okay, so I will make the motion. I move that we reconsider our action taken on the 13th, I believe it was, in passing the amendment to section 9.22 of the charter.
Second.
All right. Any discussion regarding reconsideration? If there's no discussion, all in favor of reconsideration, please say aye by holding up your hands. Okay, it passed unanimously, so we are now able to reconsider. Let's repeat the motion. We had a motion.
The
Someone made a
motion
motion.
is to approve for submission to the full CRC, the latest draft submitted by Kevin, and I have reviewed it, and so has Randy.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor.
It's been seconded and we're at discussion.
Now, I don't want people to vote on this motion until they know what's in it. Now, have you all seen the motion? Did Kevin send it to you all? Because I didn't have it till just now. Everyone has seen the amendment. Okay. It's a good amendment, a lot of good stuff in it. It softened some of the things I had in there, but brought them back. So I think that I can support it. Jane.
Am I muted? No, I'm not muted. Okay.
No, you're good.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The only thing I noted that I thought we might want to consider is under section 1B, where it says the county manager shall provide an adequate in-person or virtual space for the commission to conduct all of its meetings. The only suggestion I would make is that it say and/or in-person and/or virtual space. And the reason I'm suggesting that is because of previous discussion that was had in this committee relating to the possibility that a virtual platform may continue to be used for future CRC meetings in some form. And it may also, and it is not impossible to have a combination of both in-person and virtual meetings. It's done by, for example, the Lopez Island School Board. So I just really feel we need to anticipate the possibility of future virtual requirements.
Friendly amendment, Kevin? Will you accept this as a friendly amendment?
I'm not a voting member on your committee, so you guys don't need me to be supporting the amendment.
I was the one who moved it and I would accept it.
I would accept it, and I'm the one who moved too.
Thank you. That's very correct. The moving party accepts it, as does the seconder. So we are changing or in-person or virtual to in-person and or virtual. Okay, that's fantastic. Any other observations regarding this? Any other discussion regarding the CRC budget and provisions, section 9.22 amendment? Yes, Jane.
A question for you all, because you've already been through many versions of this, but I noted that in previous versions, there was reference made to the auditor preparing an estimate of the budget that would be needed. And that's no longer there. And I'm assuming that's really not that necessary. So it sounds to me like it's really more squarely, sits with the council, and they can ask for, on the sidelines, they can ask for the auditor's input on that. So it's just a question. I'm not requiring any change or asking for any change.
I really like, Jane, I really like the commensurate with expenditures. That's really an improvement on what I said. It's not as hard as what I said. And it lets the county commission feel more in control, which of course they are. All right. All right. So any further comments regarding the motion? Hearing none, we'll take a vote on this motion. The motion is to approve Kevin's submission with the change, with the and or change that you have all seen, which is the amendment to section 9.22, the CRC budget and provisions. All right.
Call the question.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Pretty good, pretty good. Some less enthusiastic than others, but we got all
Thanks,
of those.
Kevin.
So thank you very much, Kevin, for your contribution.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah.
Kevin, you are welcome to stick around for the next item, which is the Bill of Rights item, the saucy item. So you being the
I'm excited to listen.
Yeah, you're an ex officio dude, as I understand. So the way that it works.
Oh.
All right. Let me see.
I noticed there's supposedly a member of the public waiting to join. Somebody has.
Oh, thank you very much. Yes, I see it. Wow. Hope he's not been there too long. All right. Okay, Ben Bama, I hope you weren't sitting there too long. We were deep in conversation and I didn't see you there, but now you're on board. And as you know, we will be taking public comment at the last 10 minutes of the meeting, which will be about 11:50, we hope. All right, so we've just passed this unanimously on 4/27, 2021. Okay, I'll put that group over here. Now we have something that I've proposed, something that Bill has proposed. We have
Bob, could I explain something about it, about what I presented? Because
of course.
What I attempted to do was to set the tone of what was really going on in the first paragraph, and then restate what Kyle had gleaned from the comprehensive plan. That list of rights was not intended to be final in any way or complete. No other counties, as Jane has pointed out, have described them differently. It seems to me that really was a job that we all need to discuss, and I didn't want to go into there.
So did Kyle tell you that what he turned in was not a submission, that he meant to be?
Kyle, but what Kyle did do, what we agreed, or I thought we agreed, was that we would take a look at the comprehensive plan's aspirations and see what we could extract from that. And that's as far as I got. There's a lot more, I'm sure, in our hearts and minds. Having
many weeks ago, that was something that I asked him to do.
Right.
At the meeting.
As I say,
look at that
it
plan.
is a very raw piece of work. It is not intended to do anything but to give people something to add to, change, re-edit, and do everything with. I do want to say the first paragraph, to me, was the key part. And I've received 3 cases from Randy this morning as to why you can't give rights to nature. And so what I am attempting to do was to word it differently and create not a legal contract, but a social contract, which we are free to do.
Hey, Bill, if Randy wants this committee to consider something regarding whether we can have a Bill of Rights, he needs to send it to me. Okay, I am the chairman of the committee, and it does me no good to not see it and plan the activities of the committee without having seen it. Okay,
I will send everybody the cases, but I do want to say, since you can't give rights to nature in this country with our present property situation has been fixed since a friend of mine at the US Supreme Court stage came up with the argument that killed the redwoods in the Sierra Club case 40 years ago, 50. And I am stingingly familiar with the law. It has not changed.
I understand. You can't give standing to a tree. I don't think anyone wants to give standing to a tree. The standing needs to go to the next friend. The standing needs to go to the people who are there defending those rights, because it's a new thing that we are recognizing. It's rights for a group that isn't sentient and cannot.
Bob, I'll just send you the cases. People can draw their own legal conclusions. But I have to say, personally, I have suffered for 4 months with this new view, and I can just simply say it's not the law. And it's.
And the committee may agree with you. Here's what I suggest we do first. Well, if I can have just a moment here, I'm going to explain what we have in front of us, okay? We have a document that I came up with some time ago, which I now have renamed. I'm no longer calling it the Bill of Rights. I'm calling it Recognition of Rights, the proposed Recognition of Rights Amendment, because I don't, as you have stated, Bill, I don't think we can create any rights here. But Thomas Jefferson was in the business of recognizing rights, the rights that were self-evident, okay? And so these either are or they are not. And for our purposes, the committee is going to decide that. But at any rate, I've got the proposed Recognition of Rights Amendment to San Juan County Home Rule Charter. Then we have one that you wrote up, Bill, which really I think looks really good. I haven't had a chance to give Liz's due consideration, because I just saw it just recently. She has looks like a very well organized Bill of Rights suggestion, and we are going to go over that also. And then we have this Bill of Rights condensed from the one that that Kyle put together, which went away again. Hold on. As I was saying, the one that Kyle put together, which Bill tells us, I think it's quite accurate when you look at it, is not really a suggestion for a Bill of Rights. It is a bunch of material that he gleaned out of the documents that he was going through that are, it's very useful, but there's that, okay? So let me start off by saying the first thing I think we need to do, and you all can correct me if you think I'm wrong. I think we need to resolve the question of whether or not we are going to proceed with the assumption that nature has rights, okay? I never thought nature had rights up until recently, and I am now a convert, but I don't know, it feels like we're moving away from that. And if that's the case, that's okay. If that's the case, it will get rid of one of our proposals, mine, because mine has a human right juxtaposed. Hopefully some of you have read this, but it's a human right juxtaposed to the right of nature that is like for instance, clean water. If we are not going to recognize the rights of nature, we can give this a toss and go on with the other documents. Okay, so what do people think? Patty?
If I could share my screen for a moment, I sort of took from Liz's thing this morning and just put the ones I liked in there, and I'd like them to be just considered. So I wanted people to see.
Okay.
Right?
Do I have to do anything? Are you already capable of doing that? Okay, go ahead.
Chairman, I have a request before we do that.
Sure, Liz. What is that?
So Patty, I just wanted to context what I did so the group and the public knows. So after reviewing Kyle's list from the comp plan and Bill's list of what possible rights are there, then Bob O'Connell's suggested Bill of Rights, which is, Bob, yours is really the only suggested Bill of Rights prior to my submission last night or this morning. And my submission came from reviewing all that material and then going back to, Jane, is that incorrect? So
Bob submitted
right.
he had two submissions, one of which was a recognition of rights that followed his original Bill of Rights, which he spoke to before.
Right. We also have a
different language.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it is. And we also have a Bill of Rights submitted by Bill Apple. Okay. And then we have one submitted by you, and then this loose.
Let me retract that summary and just say, so what I did in reviewing that material is I realized that as commissioners, we had been sent a document from Corsigi Community Rights San Juan Islands. So I went back and I looked at that document because those folks have been working for several years on drafting. So I looked at that. I recognized that some of the language we're probably not going to get it out of this committee, let alone the full committee. So I made modifications to their document. And then Jane, recognizing that it didn't address the social justice and equity piece at all, I added two pieces out of the Earth Charter that San Juan County signed on to in 2003. So that's just the backdrop for what I'm presenting.
So I'm going to
thank you, Liz.
This to see if just to see what that document might look like condensed, and I took her suggestions and put them in there. So I don't know.
Patty, what is this document again? Is Is this the Patty document?
Yes.
I guess it is. It's the Patty
So,
document drawn from Liz.
Jane, where's yours? Okay. You all did exactly what I asked you to do, and I thank you very much for doing it, taking a look at things yourselves and making
And-
proposals.
Patty, are you able to enlarge that without causing chaos?
I think so. Let me see. Just a sec. That better?
I'll just put my face in the screen. That's okay. There you go. Thank you.
Did it get,
There,
did it
that's
get
perfect.
bigger?
That's perfect. You'll just have to scroll up and down.
okay.
So what, Patty, do you know what you removed? So
I left him there. I just took your A3 and your suggestion for B, C, D, and E
and
out of the document that you sent.
all of those that don't have numbers are from the original document submitted by Community Rights. So the one with the A3, that came from the Earth Charter. So that was drawn from there. So
But you have condensed some of these, you know, they were your suggestions. I just took your suggestions rather than, yeah.
right, but so
Oh, okay.
so A1 and 2 you removed.
Right. Because I figured I
Right.
like this one best, but
Yeah,
one
so
and-
they weren't either or, they were pointing to 3 different things.
I see. Okay, sorry about that.
And
should
I
put it back in.
I kept so what you've done is you've pulled out all of what I was drawing from. So we're just looking at the document, but you
Right.
left out 1, 2, and 3. So I see.
I
So you
left out
haven't,
1, 2, 3.
so you haven't modified this stuff, the writing, you just removed the source document from what we were looking at.
Now,
I can stop this share because it's not appropriate
Right.
anymore.
So
I can see that document indeed does recognize, when it gets down to the one paragraph, recognizes the rights of nature, or in this case, recognizes the rights of the Salish Sea ecosystem. Okay, and so that's taking a certain stance,
So
which some
Bob-
people are going to agree with, and other
Bob?
people are, yes, Liz, yes.
Can I share the document so that we can see all of it?
Sure, we're going to get to that, I promise you. The first thing I want to do is find out what the position is of this committee on the what I think is the tough question, because it will get rid of at least one of these, which is mine, because mine is built around the rights of nature. So can we have a discussion about that, and maybe a straw poll? What about this? Do you think it's important to discuss whether or not we think that nature has rights, and whether that ought to be represented in our charter?
My position is that I think all of these sort of recognize that nature has rights. They just say it in a different way.
Well, Bill's doesn't.
Well, his relates to humans using nature responsibly, which in my
Oh,
mind
sure.
is how nature has rights. But
Yeah, but it's all anchored.
You're right.
It's all
This is
anchored
legal
on
language.
human beings. On
Right,
human
right.
beings. And yeah, right.
yeah, and no, I side with you that maybe we should not just be so human natured, but I know that the law says we should.
All right. So let me ask this question. Let's take a straw poll here. Who thinks that the rights of nature ought to, please don't interrupt, Liz. Let me at least get through my sentence, okay? Who thinks that the rights of nature ought to be a part of our amendment? Having asked that question, Liz, what did you want to say?
Did you want show of hands, or?
Yeah.
You've asked a question.
Yeah. Yeah. Who thinks that the rights of nature ought to be a part of this amendment?
So
Yeah.
That's 3. And 1, 2.
So Bob, I don't think it's a fair question. I think we're asking the wrong question. I apologize to interrupt, but
Okay, well, let's ask another question. This question failed. So
yeah.
let's,
So I'm
go ahead.
trying to not interrupt, sorry.
Go ahead.
So that
Liz was speaking, Bill. Go ahead.
That's fair. My hand
Go ahead,
is
Liz.
sitting up.
yeah.
Go ahead, Liz.
So because we're grappling with a mental reframe, it's not easy to get to the right language. And that's why I was just saying that the straw poll wasn't using the right language and it wasn't getting us to, we've spent 4 months discussing
I
the
see.
inclusion of this and I did not want to.
And so-
simply- yeah, so, and I would happy to hear.
What
from
would the right
Jane.
language be?
I don't have that off the top of my head. I know Jane and Bill, I have questions of Bill, but let's let Jane and Kevin, let's
I
let
think,
raise hands respond.
Jane and then Kevin. Go ahead, Jane.
I think Bill had his hand up first. I defer to
Bill?
Bill.
I think Jane was ahead of me.
I'm always
Go
ahead of you,
ahead.
Bill, but.
Go ahead, Jane. Go ahead, Jane.
Well, listen, guys, I mean, I don't want to throw a spanner in here at all. And I sent you guys an email about this with a bit of a question, and it related to something a bit more fundamental, stepping back a little bit and asking, which Bill has kind of addressed in his explanatory notes to the piece he submitted, but it is more about what are we trying to accomplish by including some kind of reference to rights in the beginning of this charter, be it a recognition of rights, be it a Bill of Rights. What are we, is it my understanding from what I've heard you guys talk about and from what I've seen in Bill's written comments is that this reflects a desire to work towards shifting a mindset in this county around what's important to the population of this county. So I respect and appreciate that. A question I have, putting my mind in the position of a constituent for whom this may be coming from left field, and also our fellow commissioners from whom this may be coming from left field, we need to be able to explain what we're trying to do with such an amendment to the charter. And I take note of, quite serious note of the fact that Bill has expressed he's had very serious and challenging conversations with Randy Gaylord about this for the last 4 months, which it doesn't sound like any of you have been a party to. Additionally, it sounds like we have some commonality in feeling that rights of nature, human rights are important, and we want to reflect that somehow, but maybe we're stuck a little bit on about how we want to do that. But a third point I wanted to make that I raised in my email to you all yesterday, which is I'm concerned about the gauntlet that Bill Apple has thrown down about the potential for pre and post-election lawsuits. So I really feel that we could spend a heck of a lot more time deliberating on language and not have addressed some of these more fundamental questions. And maybe you guys are further along on the track because I really just joined your group more recently, but I also will speak on behalf of the Justice and Equity Committee and say, we're doing some pretty important transformatory stuff there that we feel has the potential to be taken up. I'm a little curious about, how far we're trying to push the envelope with a recognition or Bill of Rights here. So please enlighten me, help me understand better. But I think I take issue with the fact that Randy is having discussions with Bill and the rest of the committee is not being privy to those. And so that suggests to me a pretty fundamental disconnect and a problematic one at that. So, and I would also just say that no matter of reference to legal cases that Randy provides or you provide, Bill, a lot of us are lay people when it comes to the law. And so in order to understand the implications of the legal cases for what we're trying to do, that needs to be discussed. You can't just throw legal cases at people and say, it failed here, it failed there, it failed here. Then let's have a discussion about it on practical terms that lay people can understand.
I'll say this about Bill having conversations with Randy. in another committee early on, a couple of months ago, I guess it was, when we were just starting to figure out how to operate. I sent it was, like I say, it was another committee. Maybe it was elected and appointed. I don't remember. I sent a question to Randy. It might have been through Kevin. I don't remember whether it was through Kevin or not, but it was not through my chairman. And I got reamed out about that. Those questions were supposed to go through the chairman of the committee, and members of the committee were not supposed to be acting for the committee and negotiating or talking to other people to get it. However, having said that, it's kind of ridiculous. There are to hold people to that completely. I mean, I have another committee where one person is going and talking to the various employees of the county to get information. Anyway, let's jump from that to I know Bill is going to want to respond, and Kevin has a response, and Bill, if I call on you, can we keep it kind of short so we can get to Kevin too? Okay, thank you. Bill.
Well, I guess a couple of things. One is I'm old and I've lived through the age of Aquarius. And that was a time in the hippie days when, with the change of mindset, everybody thought the world would change, the law would change. We were in a whole new world. And this is what's going on now. Now, you've got a choice. You're either going to make a legal document or you're going to make a social document. People with the new mindset, which I share, just don't misunderstand this. I share our desires, but all we can do, not what we want to do, but what we can do, is try to change the social contract, which is powerful. There, all the way back, a friend of mine is an archaeological sociologist, and all the way back to the tribes, they didn't have laws. They didn't need laws. They had very strong social rules. And this is where you start changing the laws. We are not going to change the law by saying, oh, we have a new head on now, and we're just going to create rights. The law is very slow, it's very formal. We have a choice. We can either make a social contract or a legal contract. I'm simply saying, as a lawyer, and I've sent you the cases, that we cannot create a legal contract, but we can create a social contract, which I
get that, Bill.
The law will follow.
I get that, Bill. If we want to change, if we want to create that legal contract you're talking about, if we want to change the law, we need to get in our cars and drive down to Olympia, right? Where the state government
Olympia is where you go.
They make those laws. However,
gentlemen, point of order. Point of order.
Yes, what is that?
Kevin has had his hand up. We have.
I know.
So
we got to get to him.
Back and forth, we're breaking down.
You're right. Thank you, Liz. And that's more of the back and forth. Okay, Kevin.
He's driving.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple points. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, a couple points. One is I do not believe you have to decide between a social and a legal contract. You need to make a legal argument that is valid. But before we even get to that, I want to say that, frankly, we don't. What our job is to do is to be as bold or as not bold as we choose to be, and come forward with recommendations. And then it is Randy's job to defend those. What Bill is trying to say is that he has had numerous conversations with Randy, and I'll touch on that aspect in a moment. And that legally, the existing language may not be the best way for us to go. And so, as Jane was saying, it's appropriate for us to take that into consideration so that we don't spend a lot of time creating something that is very obviously going to be shot down. But are we able to make recommendations that will be challenged? Absolutely. Do we want to have challenges on every single recommendation? Probably not. So my first point, however, is more important, which is there is case law that would suggest that having standing for a tree is probably not going to fly. However, you can increase standing for individuals as it relates to an ecosystem. And that case law does exist, and there is precedent there. And what I'm getting at is you could basically do a rights of nature that isn't giving the rights to nature. It's expanding the rights of citizens to enjoy or appreciate or have a healthy marine ecosystem or a healthy terrestrial ecosystem and so on. And that case law exists under the Federal Clean Water Act, the Federal Clean Air Act, and so on. And so you may be able to make the same argument you want to make, and instead of giving standing to a tree, you increase the standing for individual citizens. That is very possible. The last point I want to make is that I do think that it's difficult that there's obviously, Bill, you have a wonderful relationship with Randy, as do many of us, but you have been having a number of conversations with Randy. And I do believe that that needs to be daylighted more, not that you need to share your conversations with Randy, but it was decided very early on what Bob is talking about, which is the chairs of the subcommittees will come up with questions and I will forward those to Randy so that we don't bombard Randy. And that hasn't been happening. And so I think that we all, maybe as a full CRC, need to make sure that we understand that so that the chairs of subcommittees are aware of these conversations before you're discussing them in a point like today. But my main point I wanted to make is it's not that you can't do what you want to do. You just maybe need to argue. You need to make a better legal argument to make it have more likelihood of being successful.
All right. I know this from our conversation. I am going to withdraw my proposed amendment of recognition of rights. Or, I mean, what I could do is go through here and take out the second sentence in every paragraph that refers to the right of nature. And it just goes, for instance, human beings in San Juan County have the right to enjoyment of all of this county's bodies of water in a clean and healthful state. Okay. And then it goes through all of those various rights like that, takes out the right of nature to exist in that way without the harmful effects of human beings. Yes, Jane.
Yeah, Liz had her hand up first, and I'd like Liz to go, and then I would like to say something.
Okay, Liz.
Yeah.
Liz.
So I'm encouraged by what Kevin has reminded us of, that we don't have to choose either or. And in what I wrote, that's what I was attempting to do, is find a healthy middle ground that we could work from as a commission to get in front of the full commission.
Right. There is, and I, just looking at these, Liz, they look really good to me. I will say that, and Kevin's got his hand up, as does Jane, but I have a right to speak also. I have to say that there's one section in here that does give rights, the rights that we're talking about. Ecosystems and natural communities of the Salish Sea ecosystem and the Salish Sea watershed within and adjacent to San Juan County possess the right to naturally exist, flourish, regenerate, evolve, and be restored, which shall include the right to be free from all corporate, government, and other business entity activities that do substantive potential harm. That section is a section I would have supported coming into today's meeting that I don't think I support any longer. Okay. But that doesn't mean the whole thing is pretty good. Yes. Okay. I've lost track. Jane, is Jane next? Or Liz, were you still talking?
So I was just saying, point of order, that you're commenting when you've already acknowledged that Kevin will be next and Jane will be next. So it isn't certainly that you don't have a right to speak, but it's that stepping in between when we've already acknowledged that Kevin was going to speak, Jane is going to speak. So
thank you. Thank you, Liz. Yeah. Kevin?
I think his hand is down now.
Liz, who is next? I'm sorry.
Jane.
Jane.
Yeah, I just want to kind of make the point that part of the reason I'm trying to do a bit of a reality check here in a way is because I am pretty darn impressed with the fact that there are as many members of the public on this call as there are commissioners. Okay, and that is a consistent thing that happens day in are week in, week out, and that's a great thing. Okay. And it happens for some of the other committees of our full commission as well. For me, this is the reason it's all the more important that we get to a place of what is really possible. And because we do not want to be blowing up expectations of constituents in our county who feel very, very strongly about this stuff, and create the impression that we didn't have the initiative to get there, or that we were beaten down or whatever. That's why for me, I feel like it's really important that we work at the level of what is likely to pass muster, and hold the spirit and vision of what commissioners want to achieve. And so I'm going to throw in another suggestion, and that is that, and I take, I take what Bill is saying about not asking Randy for his advice. I don't think anybody thought that he was, but it may be that there's a point in time when it is important for Randy to speak to this group about, I mean, once this group has further formed its ideas about what it feels would be the right fit in terms of putting the full commission. But I'm saying that a bit cautiously, because I'm just trying to, I'm just struggling with what's realistic here. And yeah, so that's I'm going to leave it there. I just am conscious of how passionate our many constituents are about this.
Thank you, Jane. Bill, I have a question for you. Can you tell me, because I want to make sure I'm anchored on this, and Kevin, you can listen to this question too, because you may have an answer to this. Can you tell me precisely what existing state or federal law preempts our right to say that, for instance, our water has a right to be clean without human degradation, for instance? What existing, and I trust that they're there. It'll just help me to let go of this idea. If you can cite me what you're talking about when you say we're preempted.
Well, the problem is whether or not a charter can create legal rights. That's not the normal function of a charter. It isn't a constitution, although that's the way it's being sold. And this is why I think people have been legally misdirected. And I don't mean with any ill will or anything. It's simply because they have a point of view and they feel there's a certain level of freedom, which there is, but the level of freedom does not create, establish the power to create rights. It isn't only preemption. It is the question of the Constitution, the amount of power that a committee such as our committee has, and also whether the functions that we are executing are legislative, and which is normally and constitutionally exclusively the purvey of the legislative body. This is a very touchy area. I know you've discussed it on another committee. And so, but rights are created either by judges or by legislature, and we are neither. We are a body that is trying to create an operating instructions for a county, and meanwhile say what we're trying to do, which is what the provision we're dealing with is. So if you say, is there preemption by state and federal law? Yes, without any question, and it's considerable. And I started out this way. If you look at an earlier draft, my first draft of rights, which as I referred to was very boring, did exactly what you're edging toward here, but in a very uninteresting way. I wrote it as a lawyer. And the law says we have all the rights that all the laws give us. I was careful not to create new rights in the very areas that the laws had dealt with. There are certain areas where the county has what is called police power, regulatory power, but we're not the body that can exercise that. The county council is, and the example of that is the water ski thing, whatever that thing was.
Yeah.
Was a good job, but we don't have power of that nature.
Right.
And so what we have to do, and I feel very strongly about this, which is obvious, we are dealing with a social contract because, and just as Kevin suggests, we are trying to embody the new thinking into a legal document, which we can do. And there's nothing wrong with that. We said, here's how to think about what we are and what we value. Now,
Bill,
do that
Bill,
without creating new law.
let me ask you a question, Bill. Do you believe that our hometown county commission, county council, has the right to make those laws that create the rights of nature? Or does it have to be in
Its powers, Bob, are also limited
yes,
because it has the same problem. It has preemption, and the powers that are granted by the Constitution aren't great. And as we found out with the whale initiative, even initiative power in this county is limited.
why don't we in this Bill of Rights, why don't we tell the world how we think about this and not try to pass legislation regarding it? Why don't we say, for instance, that nature ought to have this right, and we recognize that nature ought to have this right, and ought to have this right, and ought to have this right? That's a message to a higher legislative body.
I think
Kevin, you've got your hand up. Go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It might be advantageous for this committee to have a discussion of what you actually want to accomplish with a little more specifics. So instead of just saying you'd love for nature to have rights, what are you trying to get at? Are you trying to say that you'd rather have greater environmental protections in San Juan County? Okay, if that's the question, then there are other legal arguments you can make to get at that. And again, you could, the full commission could put out to the ballot that we want to give nature rights. We could do that. What we have heard via Bill from our prosecutor is that is unlikely to be successful and would probably get challenged before it even gets to the ballot. So if that's the case, we can instead make a legal argument for how we can strengthen environmental protections in San Juan County. And basically you get to the same end result, but you just use a different legal argument to get there. So it would be interesting to, if you guys wanted to dive into that further and then spend some time, you've got two very capable attorneys on your committee. You guys can spend some time researching, okay, what could we do under the Clean Water Act? What could you do under the Coastal Zone Management Act? And all of those laws, there's already very deep precedent set, as well as the laws themselves talk about consistency, not just with the state laws, but all the way down to the county laws. So there's already recognition of that. It's why we have a local shoreline master program, which is consistent with our state Shoreline Management Act, which is consistent with the federal Coastal Zone Management Act. And so, again, if we can go back to those arguments, I think we could actually come forward with something that could go to the ballot that could be really strong and get to the end goal that our citizens are asking for, but maybe with a stronger legal argument that would hold weight and stand up to a challenge.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm sorry, someone informed me, was Bill's hand up first or Liz's?
I just want to say that I have
You just
to
muted
look at
yourself.
what people have
Okay.
submitted. But I think I looked at what Liz had produced, and I think one of the problems with discussing rights is we have rights, they have rights. It's all me, me, me. The point that I tried to put in what I submitted and what Liz submitted, which are very important elements. what are our responsibilities? Nobody's talking responsibilities. Liz is the first I've seen besides mine. It's what do we do as responsible parts of this equation? I don't think it's necessary to create rights. You'll notice that all the laws that Kevin has discussed are laws that they don't give rights to nature. They tell people what they must not do. And
Well, Bill,
that is how nature gets protected.
of course it is, Bill. I think that there you cannot not even conceive of a right that you would have nature that you would give to nature that would not be protecting nature from some bad thing that human beings do. That's all. That's what it is. And some of it's neutral stuff, not intended to be bad, or none of it really is intended to be bad, probably. But it's the activities, it's the harmful activities of human beings. Every single idea about the Bill of Rights wants to rein that in. And Kevin is talking about environmental protection, and that is exactly what the goal is of environmental protection. It's a matter of how strong it gets, I suppose. So I have an idea, and see what you all think of it. And then, Liz, I'll go to you directly after I say this. Could we go through each of these documents and pick out the things that that do not purport to create a new right in nature, but rather talks about how human beings ought to behave? Could we go through and pluck those things out and put that into this bill? Liz, what do you have to say?
Remembering that the conversation we're attempting to forward, and all in different ways, but all, from my perspective, attempting to get to the same place, it is in the same company with the civil rights movement, with the suffragettes, with the reality of that our language and our laws used to not see a Black man or woman as having rights, as a valued other than for their purpose of extractive use and labor. That is the conversation we're attempting to forward, that until we get our mind in alignment with the fact that we are part of nature, nature is not there for us to extract into extinction, which is what we're doing. So for me, any conversation about backing away from the fullest throttled language we can come up with is a criminal act at this point in history. It's such an act of negligence and disregard for where we as a species have brought our entire ecosystem, planet, every brother, sister of every species, that there's no way that I think any of us want to back away from the obligation we have to make a course correction here. And with the commission's permission, if I need that, I would like to send the document I wrote to Kevin, and just so he has that in front of him as well. Is that all right for me to send that off?
Of course it is. You can send.
Well, we try to keep, we've been trying to keep our bodies of work within the,
right, but for purposes of today, I mean, Kevin is an ex officio member of this committee, so okay. You can send things to him.
So yes, I will send that to Kevin, because I'm attempting to do what Bill is addressing, what Kevin is addressing.
Of course.
To find that language that that just the idea of the stake in the ground, and I will go no further kind of act, that's what we're attempting here.
Okay.
And so thank you.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's done. I'm done.
Okay, Kevin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just, and Liz, thank you for the tee up for this. I was just going to say that all of you who are not on the Environment and Climate Committee need to begin sitting in on our meetings, because there is so much overlap between what you're talking about right now and what we're trying to do in that committee with creating a new department that will be headed by an elected official. That's how you're going to get the protections you're talking about, is by forcing the county to take the actions that it's so far only said it was going to do in resolutions, or has only begun to do. I think there's so much more that our county could do, and I would really encourage all of you to sit in on those meetings so that we can join this conversation.
All right, Liz has her hand up, but before I go to her,
Oh, and Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to step off the call in just a moment,
Okay.
but I just wanted to thank you all for letting me sit in.
and thank you, Kevin, for your contributions. They've been invaluable. All right.
Kevin, before you go, Mr. Chair, want to respond to that?
Yes. It looks like he's gone though.
So I think one of the things
No,
that
he's there.
we're all attempting to do is get alignment between every governing document in our county. So the comp plan is heading in a stronger direction for our overall well-being and our ecosystem's well-being. The charter, we're attempting to do that. And what's the third document? I've lost it here. Anyway, so having all of our laws, our ordinances all be aligned so they support each other and reinforce the changes that we're driving towards. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bob, can I respond to that quickly before I sign off?
Yes, Kevin.
So thank you very much for that, Liz. I completely agree. And frankly, that's our task. One of the things we've recognized is, for instance, with the comp plan doesn't necessarily have teeth. It does in some areas, like its maps, but a lot of the language in the comp plan needs to be implemented by other ordinances or other actions. And so what we have an opportunity to do right now with our charter is take that head on and mandate that be done to get out exactly what you're saying. And I think that's a critical task we have to do. The other thing is, there's a lot of people in the community who are starting to question, and not in a negative way, in some of it in a very positive way, the fact that the Charter Commission is reviewing these things. And what I would say is really important that we need to educate people around is that we've only had a charter for a handful of years, or 15 years now or something. And many counties have had it for decades. And they've gone through these opportunities and discussions many years before us. So we're just finally getting there. But we have an opportunity to align the exact pieces of our laws that we have right now, just as you said, Liz, but it's going to take work. So I look forward to that discussion, but that's exactly where we are. You're spot on, Liz.
It is time for public comment.
What if we, and we'll get to that in just a second. What if we had a Bill of Rights that stated what we thought the important rights are that we have, and then we stated what additional rights we thought we ought to have? Any value in that at all?
Bill has his hand up.
Bill.
I just want to say that to the extent that we cannot enact legislation, and I've said it in the chat, we do need to propose ordinances, and we need to fight just as hard for those ordinances as we do for the charter, because the ordinances don't need the charter. The county needs us to come up with the ordinances. And even if the charter failed and we got our ordinances passed, we will have done what we cannot do with the charter. People need to keep this in mind.
I think that's going to be the, possibly be, Kevin, you correct me if you think I'm wrong, possibly be the task of the climate commissioner and the climate department to think about appropriate ordinances that will affect the climate and the environment that our council ought to pass. Okay, we're at the public comment place now, folks. But before we leave, we've got to give this some direction. Here's what I'm suggesting we do. We all have all of these documents. Print them up, do whatever you need to do, and go through them and indicate what you think is good and what you think ought to go in each one of these. And maybe we can construct something that is a hybrid that takes us where we want to go. And we've got to find out where we want to go. I mean, I asked that question an hour ago about the rights of nature and who believed in it and who didn't, who thought it, not believed in it, but who thought it ought to go into the charter. That's way different than who believes in it. Okay. And I only got three takers. So think about this. It's going to be number one on our list next week again, the Bill of Rights. We've got to work till we figure out where we're going. And I think possibly public comment right now can help us just a little bit. So I'm going to sign over to the public, and any members of the public who wish to speak, hold your hand up, please. Elizabeth R. Let's hear it. And thank you for being here.
Thank you for doing this and working hard on this incredibly challenging topic. So I'm Elizabeth Robson. I live in Lopez. I'm with Community Rights San Juan Islands. First, I'd like to remind you that humans are nature. So when we talk about nature, we're including ourselves. We view rights of nature in Community Rights San Juan Islands and in the Rights of Nature movement as not as creating new rights, but rather as an expansion of rights. In the past, people who were brought to the United States as slaves did not have rights, and we expanded our idea of what human rights means to include those people. In a similar way, we are advocating to expand the rights, the idea of rights to include our fellow non-human beings and ecosystems on the planet, and remembering that we are completely dependent on ecosystems and non-human beings for our existence on this planet. You all seem concerned about what is legal and not legal. I'd like to remind you, as Liz pointed out, that it was illegal to help slaves escape, that it was illegal for women to vote, that it was illegal to hide Jews from the Nazis, that it was legal for men to rape their wives. Just because something is legal doesn't mean it's right. And if we ask permission to change the law, we will not get permission, because the law is firmly on the side of treating nature as property and sacrificing nature in the service of the economy, of commerce. We've been in this model of treating nature as property in the service of commerce for hundreds of years, and this model has failed completely. I don't have to tell you how dire the situation is that we're in with the environment, how business as usual has led to horrors for non-humans and ecosystems, and will create horrors for us, the most privileged people in the world, probably within our lifetimes. Some have talked about creating rights. We are asking the county to recognize the rights we believe nature already has. And just because it hasn't traditionally been in the purview of municipal charters doesn't mean it can't be. It's up to us. Our charter is defined by us, the people who live in the county. We can change how people view charters, particularly in a state and a county that recognizes home rule charter. We cannot limit our vision based on the current law, because the current law is utterly failing us. Having better laws doesn't change the fundamental problem that we treat nature as property, and that it is causing harm that may lead to human extinction, as well as many other extinctions and devastations that are happening every single day. We must not let our ideas about what we are allowed to do to limit our thinking about what is possible. Some have expressed concerns about lawsuits in response to adding a Bill of Rights to the Charter. Whenever people forge new paths, we open ourselves up to other people and governments and corporations who disagree with us, and the way they disagree is usually via lawsuits. But we make changes like this because it's the right thing to do. Do we want to lead in doing the right thing, or do we want to take the safe path? We have an opportunity to show how to lead with bold change. Having a department for climate and environment is great, and I support that, but it is essentially kicking the can down the road. It is not the decisive action that we need in direction for our county. As Liz pointed out, not taking decisive, bold action by setting out our values in a Bill of Rights in the county charter so that everyone understands the scope of the change we need to make is, at this point in history, negligent to humans, to ecosystems, to non-humans, to the most vulnerable humans, and to the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. That was very, very useful. Anyone else? Oh, Ben has got his hand up. I guess that's a hand up. Ben, unmute yourself and.
Hi, yes, I was actually clapping for Elizabeth. Can you
Oh,
all hear me?
okay.
Yeah, but I was about to raise my hand anyway. And I just wanted to say that that you're talking about now, instead of giving rights to nature, giving rights to people who want to protect nature, that's a great distinction. And I think it ends up at the same place. You know, I support whatever you guys can do that sort of pushes through the spirit of this. And maybe not necessarily, you know, what the wording is. I do want to say, and I'm sure you would have thought of this, I have no doubt you would have thought of it, but I just want to make sure by the verbiage of ensuring that every, you know, resident has the right to enjoy, you know, right to enjoy is pretty broadly interpreted. And I think that as long as there's some wording in there that we're giving more legal standing to people who want to protect nature, not inadvertently giving more standing to people who want to profit from nature, because I think a lot of people would agree that profiting from nature is very enjoyable. So I just wanted to go on record saying that, and thank you very much. You guys are doing great work.
Thank you, Ben. Any other comments from the public?
Bob, Iris and Alexandra.
I see. Alexandra, go ahead.
Thank you.
And Iris, you'll be next.
Three things. First, I agree with what Beth and Ben have said. I agree with what Kevin said about taking the road that's most effective to get there with the charter. I would like there to be language in the charter itself that somehow recognizes, I don't know what's the best language. I'm not a legal expert, but I want there to be some language that recognizes the spirit of what we're trying to achieve by recognizing that the whole system that we're in doesn't really work. And I don't know whether that's a social contract or whatever. I haven't seen a lot of the documents that you're talking about. So, but I think I both want this to work, you know, in terms of providing better protection. And I agree with what Ben said about, you know, not making it like, you know, nature here for people to enjoy. But I think the part about putting in responsibility right next to anything that we say people have the brighter privilege to do needs to come with responsibility. And I also want to say, I am not a parliamentarian, but this committee operates really differently than any of the other committees relative to the level of participation of the chair. And I know Liz brought up something about this earlier, but I have observed that in this meeting that it seems like I don't know what's appropriate. You know, I don't know what the rules say, but somehow it doesn't seem like the chair should have the ability to interrupt people when they have their hand up and it's their turn to speak, and to interject in between all the, you know, the order of raised hands and stuff. But I don't know what's the proper way to do that. I just wanted to say I've noticed that, you know, other people are getting interrupted and not being allowed to speak because of interruptions and interjections by the chair. And Bob, you're my friend, so I'd say this with all love and kindness. I know it's not intentional. I just want to support the voices of all the people on the committee and not let them be overruled by whatever. So overall, I really appreciate all that you're doing, and, you know, the amount of time and effort it takes to get this thing organized and create something and, you know, something that will not be shot down, like what Jane was saying, and being responsible about it at the same time, moving us further down the road and looking at, you know, how can we create a national amendment, you know, an amendment to the Constitution so that something can really change here. I don't know how successful that would be. And I, you know, not a lawyer about that, but just, you know, I recognize the value of what Liz was saying about, you know, we need to change our thinking here. And part of that work can be done on any level we can do it. So thank you for the part that we can do here. And thanks for being so good about letting public people comment. Thanks.
Thank you, Alexandra. Before I call on Iris, I just want to state that I believe that she's right about me not calling on people and interrupting. And I hate the fact that I'm doing that if I'm doing that, and I think I probably am. I also get interrupted when it's my turn, and I don't like that. So I'm going to try and do it more in order. And let me say that philosophically, I talked with Kevin about the role of the chairman, and because in some large bodies, the chairman just calls on people, doesn't take a stand or even vote. I would rather have been a regular member than be that kind of chairman, because I feel passionately about some of these things. But you're right. Thank you for that note. And Iris.
Thank you. I'm Iris Gravel. I'm a 25-year resident of Lopez Island. And this is the first time I've attended a Charter Commission committee meeting or any kind of meeting of the Charter Commission. And I want to thank you all for the work you're doing. And just sitting in on this meeting today has certainly increased my awareness of the complexities of this work that you're doing. I just want to add my voice to those of Liz and Elizabeth, Beth, about that we are in a time of new thinking. And I think that Liz's comparison to, this time being much like when Black Americans were recognized as people, when women were recognized for their rights, that is an apt analogy and one that really should be guiding our actions. And I am asking this commission and this committee take those bold steps. And I support you in looking for ways to do that have the best chance of being effective. And at the same time, I think that it's important to take those steps, even at the risk of them not being accepted, just because of they are steps along the way to get us to where we hopefully, want to end up. And having a clear statement from this committee and hopefully from the full commission that we can no longer deny the responsibilities that we citizens have to care for nature, something that other peoples have understood through all time, that we need to do that same kind of acknowledgement and have action behind it. So what those exact words will be, I don't have any to offer, but I appreciate that you all are wrestling with that, and just want to add my voice in support for you to really keep at that work. So thank you.
Thank you so much for those comments, Iris. The meeting will be extended 10 minutes. Who was next between Kai and Micheline? Kai, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, hi, thank you. And once again, I appreciate your work and the challenging willingness to have these challenging conversations. Yeah, I'm from Lopez Island. And I just wanted to say that, I think that the regulatory laws have worked in some cases in our countries, but we are 50 years on with the EPA, and we are at the brink. We are truly at the brink. The aspirations of 50 years ago when the EPA was established and Earth Day and all of that, Bill's reference to the hippie days, our regulatory system has not protected us from a very uncertain future for even our children, not to mention their children. So I am not sure that without a radical change in behavior and a radical paradigm shift in how we look at ourselves, our relationship to nature and our relationship to each other, I don't know that more regulations will make the changes that are needed now. I think that our legal system is a slow system to change, but it is a system in flux. I mean, corporations have rights. Across the country, the right to vote is being challenged in places. The right to protest is being challenged. Other kinds of, there's expansion in other areas. So I think it is a system in flux. But so recognizing nature, while it is definitely pushing at all the edges, and it is not it does not have, we don't have legal permission to do that. It does ask us to change our relationship to nature in the most profound way. It's not regulating how many trees I cut down or what I do on my shoreline. It is telling me that that shoreline is me and I am that shoreline. This island is me, and how the health of this island, the health of the Salish Sea, is directly tied to my health. And I have a responsibility to take care of the health of the Salish Sea, as I have a responsibility to take care of my health and my children's health and your children's health. So we understand it's radical. We understand there's no permission for it and that there will be pushback. But just like as people have referenced, the suffragists and the abolitionists were pushing against a system where everyone told them they were doing something that was illegal and it was not allowed. They pushed and they did it. And without them, we would not be even as far along as we are today. So with that, I just want to honor that you are having courageous conversations, and I really support your work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kai, for your comments and for being here, not just today, but Micheline.
Hi, everyone. I'm Micheline Halliday from San Juan Island. Thank you very much for being here, having these conversations. I really actually don't have much to say because everyone spoke for me. I so agree with what Liz said, what Kai said, what Alexandra said, Iris and Elizabeth. I feel a huge responsibility to say stop. It's time. We're at, like they say, we're at the edge. We have to do something. We don't actually have a choice. I don't actually see that we have any other option but to think differently, be responsible, make our sacrifices. We have asked nature to make sacrifices for us for hundreds of years. It's just our turn. Mother Nature says it's our turn. And I'm willing to do it. And I think other people in my community are willing to do it. When I was a little girl, they raised a house across the street from me, and in it, they found tunnels. And it turned out to be part of the underground. And even as a little kid, I looked at that and went, wow, what did those people risk? What did they do? I felt they were so brave, and I was so admiring of them. And in a way, you're all sitting there in that same place that they were. You kind of have to be bold, step forward, be brave, and just stand up for nature. Stand up for all the community of San Juan Islands, all of it, me, you, the animals, the trees, the air, the water, the Salish Sea. And so I thank you.
And thank you. Alexandra, do you have your hand up again? We have 3 minutes left. Go ahead.
I had a lengthy conversation with Kendra Smith yesterday. She's the Deputy Director of Public Works and also is in charge of environmental resources for the county. And one of the things she said was that the real issue that we're having is a lack of enforcement, which is something that's been addressed over there in the climate committee. You know, how do we create enforcement for whatever our rules are? But the mentality that she described is that the wealthy people who own waterfront properties are basically going to do whatever the hell they want, regardless of what the laws are, because they have deep enough pockets to be able to afford the lawsuits, and the county doesn't have enough money unless it's sacrificed every single thing else that the county needed money for to fight lawsuits against people who argue against the enforcement of the rules. And I'm just kind of thinking about that. Like, I don't want to back down from creating lofty aspirations because of the fear that we're going to get sued. But I'm also just curious, this is just a thinking thing. How can we change something so that when somebody breaks the law, it's a criminal offense and not a civil one? I don't know if that's possible or how to do it. I'm just saying, I really agree that the level of problem that we've arrived at here with regard to how the behavior of an individual is threatening the health and life of the whole of other people and of all of the natural beings, but that when the behavior of a business rises to the level that it threatens the lives of other human beings, how is that not treated as murder? So I just wanted to throw out that thinking into, the reason for being brave and bold and figuring out what the heck we can do here that can actually result in change and not just sound good on paper. So sorry, that's not more inspiring, because I loved what Micheline ended with, charge into the future and do the bold thing. And, so I understand the complexity of the problem we're dealing with. And we do have a lot of resources in the county. And Kendra said, boy, I wish they would reach out to me more to understand what we're doing and what our issues are and how, because there's, like she says, there's 5 of us over here. We're doing really good work, but people don't know about it because we need educators. Anyway, so, well, I'll leave it at that, but thank you.
Thank you, Alexander. Thank you so much. Kai, do you still have your hand up, or is that an artifact of when you talked last? You're done. Anybody else have any other comments? If not, we have reached the end of our time. Thank you so much, everyone, all the members of the public, and certainly the members of the committee. I'm going to try my best to take Alexander's comments to heart, and please do not hesitate to call me on that. Okay, don't hesitate to call me on that. I don't mean to do that. Yes, Liz.
I wondered if before we end the meeting, we wanted to take 2 minutes to discuss next week's agenda. This has been a really fruitful, although frustrating meeting, but I think to get some clarity about our agenda for next week might be time well spent.
Next week, I don't know of anything else on the agenda next week other than to reach a resolution about this Bill of Rights or whatever the document is going to be that we produce and what's in it. I mean, we might move to a statement of our values. Who knows? It's a matter of, I'm doing it again. Thank you. I think that Bill of Rights is what we're going to be taking up. And I've asked everyone to please take a look at all the documents that have been submitted and mine from those documents pieces that you think would be good, that will work for all of us, and be prepared to tell us what those pieces are of each one of these documents, the ones you've put in yellow or whatever. Yes, Liz.
I just want to ask the rest of the commissioners, I thought there had been a couple of mentions of things that needed to be on our agenda, so maybe I misheard.
What are those, please? I missed them also.
Can we ask that of the?
What are those? I don't know of any. The question is asked. Liz thinks that there are other things that need to go on the agenda. I don't know what they could be, but if someone else does, Jane.
Well, I mean, Kevin did make the point that there's a tremendous amount of crossover between what the Environment and Climate Change Committee is working on and what this committee is working on. And so it could be useful to somehow find a way to bridge a gap there and understand the aspirations of what this committee wants to come up with and what that committee is working on. And as we are trying to do with the what the Justice and Equity Committee is working on, and having myself and Kyle be a part of this group. So that's something that this group should be thinking about, I think.
How about this, Jane? I am on that committee, the Climate and Environment Committee, and it means a whole lot to me. It's a very important committee to me. What if I took 5 minutes at the beginning of the next meeting to apprise this committee of where we're at in the climate committee, what things are being discussed, and where it is kind of headed, and how it might cross over to this committee. Just making a 5-minute presentation about that. Yes, Patty, you're muted.
I would appreciate that, but I also want to know, when does that committee meet?
Tomorrow from 10 to 12.
Okay, yeah, because I know Kevin was encouraging us to try to attend that committee too.
Right. I don't recall how many members there are. You're going to need to look at that that question and make sure we don't go over. Yes, Liz.
And if I'm correct, Bob, you're on that. I am, and isn't Kyle also on the?
I think so. Yes.
There are already 3 of this from that committee.
Okay.
Who are carrying information back and forth, and so definitely we could start with an intro takeaway. Keep it really short, but I think that'd be valuable.
Thank you, Liz. It doesn't have to be just me. Let's say that the other people that are on that committee can make contributions, will make contributions also to the understanding of this committee of what's going on there, because we need to cross-pollinate. Jane.
Yeah, I was just going to say I won't be following that on the environment side with this group, because it's well covered by all of you, in the sense that I look forward to you guys sharing back the cross fertilization integration. I will continue to work with Kyle on the justice and equity side, and the language that we would like to see related to the interconnectedness between human rights and the rights of humans. So human rights and the rights of nature. So I feel like I'm a bit on a watching brief, because you guys have kicked the ball forward some language. And so I don't want to add more when we're still working with some of what we already have.
Are people okay with, I was about to end the meeting, but go ahead, Liz.
Jean, I wanted to request that maybe we can meet in between and have you look at the document I created, the bit that's in there for social economic justice, see if we can make revisions, because I think we're at the point of really needing your input and don't want to get any further down the pike and then have to backtrack again. Would that work for the committee and for you, Jane?
Yeah, that would work. That would work fine. Thank you, Liz, and we can certainly talk offline. Mr. Chair, if I can just make one more additional point.
Yes, ma'am.
That is that, and Liz and I had an offline discussion maybe 10 days ago or so, when I was just joining you guys. But in the spirit of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, I really feel like we should be focusing on the word sustainability and not resiliency, because we need to think about being a sustainable economy and a sustainable society, and having nature that is sustainable. If it's not, efforts to be resilient as an economy and as nature are moot, frankly. So sustainability language, I've seen some reference to it, but I'm not interested in resiliency at this point. It's sort of beyond that. Anyway, that's just my take.
Thanks, Jane. Do you have your hand up, Liz? You got a hand up, Liz.
In that spirit, I wanted to make a motion that the last line of the preamble that we have approved, that in the last sentence is, they're doing so secures for ourselves and future generations the San Juan Islands economic stability and soul sustaining beauty, that we change the word stability to sustainability.
Economic sustainability.
Does that work?
Can we take that up like next time, because
okay.
I do not hear a second. Liz, if you'd like to renew your motion at the next meeting, then you can do that. Right now it fails for lack of a second. All right, if there's no further comments or anything that needs to be addressed, let's get ready for the Bill of Rights next time out. And do I hear a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
Looks like there's a second. Without any discussion regarding that, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Put your hand up.
Thank
Okay,
you, Mr.
we are
Chair.
adjourned, and thank you so much. And I'll try to be a better boy next time.
Thank you all for.
I mean it. I'm not, yeah. Bye-bye.
And, okay, bye.